is you saw the city of New Orleans get completely just demolished by water, right? And the fact that there were lots of primarily African American folks in the inner city that were not getting the help that they needed. The response was slow by the Bush administration, by the federal emergency response teams out there to try to fix the problem. Prompting folks like Kanye West down here. You see him. Kanye West actually said George Bush doesn't care about black people. Well, with all of the simmering racial tension in American history, I think this probably didn't help. And it was the botched Hurricane Katrina response of the Bush administration of not helping, in many people's eyes, the inner city residents fast enough. That combined with the ongoing war in Iraq kind of has this effect of dipping the popular opinion polls of Bush. Yeah. Yes, they did. Canada's just a better country than so many years. They're just nicer. It's weird. Any country that calls bathrooms washrooms is really cool. Anyways, some interesting stuff. And what happens, this is kind of interesting. This is Bush's presidency and his popular approval ratings. So 2001, September 11th, you got the spike, right? Bush makes all the television, things that he can to just reassure the American people, get revenge on the terrorists. America's behind the president, right? Because as Teddy Roosevelt said, nothing unifies Americans like a war. I'm not sure that's why Bush did it, but that's the effect. As time goes on, war in Iraq, a little bit of bump in 2003. The war in Iraq, we're going to go after the terrorists, but the war's going on. People lose enthusiasm. The election, people start to like him a little bit, but then Hurricane Katrina, right at the end of 2005, he starts to dip. Now, 2006 is a big year because that's an election year. It's called a midterm election, that's right. Why is it called midterms? Because it's in the middle of his term. You know what I'm saying? You go 2004, the election. 2008 is Obama's election. 2006, you got the new election here for members of Congress. And Bush is hanging around at near 40%. So what do you think happens to his party and the control of Congress at that point? Yes, he's going to lose control. And that's exactly what's going to happen. In 2006, the Democrats are going to take over the House and the Senate. Let me go back a little bit, sorry. They're going to take over the House and the Senate. And through 2007, that's Bush's last year, you have the unthinkable. The recession starts, right? With the housing bubble and so on, which I'm not going to totally go into. The stock market dips like 700 points in one day. It's like a mini crash right at the end of 2007. So by 2008, you have the Democrats are just licking their chops and they're going, awesome. We can win. Now the Democrats, interestingly enough, guess who the front runner was for the Democratic nomination back in early 2008, late 2007? Just take a wild guess. Hillary. Oh yes. It was going to be Hillary. I guarantee it. But President Obama, who was just a senator back then, outworked her. He basically outworked her his campaign outworked her campaign by far. And by early 2008, by February, he becomes the front runner. And he picks eventually this guy as his running mate, Joe Biden. The Republicans are struggling to find a guy or a woman not that John McCain's a woman, but a guy, to represent them. They settle on John McCain. John McCain is an old, aged man who has a lot of foreign policy experience. He's a person that they felt that would be a good fit for the White House and the demands of the job with the terrorism going on and all of a sudden. And then he probably, depending on how you look at it, he picks this person, Sarah Palin, as his running mate. Sarah Palin was the governor of Alaska. She was fairly politically inexperienced and often got into trouble talking to the media. I think the Republicans were trying to make a splash by picking a woman to be a vice presidential candidate. However, I think in the election, many people probably didn't vote for McCain, probably because they thought her inexperience might hurt that his presidency, because if he dies, like, she would be president. And some people might not be comfortable with that. Some people would. Barack Obama, though, I think the reason he won the election is because the Republicans were so unpopular anyway. Number two, it was a historic election. America has the chance to elect a black man for the first time. That's a big deal, okay? And so the Electoral College map looks very different. And, you know, for the first time in a long time, you have a lot more blue states. And one of the reasons for that is because, including Florida, the Democrats were able to mobilize a great deal of support. And not only that, people were frustrated with the fact that the economy was doing so poorly. And when that tends to happen, Democrats tend to win office. Obama won not only the popular and electoral vote, but also his party won in Congress. You had more Democrats in Congress. You also had a huge majority. And so Democrats were licking their chops saying, hey, now's a good time to pass national health care because we got this huge majority. Also have massive majorities in the Senate too, 60-40 at one point, a filibuster-proof majority. And so everything's looking good. Unfortunately for Obama, the big issues that he had to deal with right off the bat tended to be this one, the economic crisis. I can remember back in 2009, right after he was elected, would you guys believe that the stock market had a Dow Jones Industrial Average of about 6,500? Right now, the Dow Jones average is 18,000. Okay, 6,500. So basically, anybody that was going to retire in like 2006, I would feel real bad for them, because all of their value of all of their stocks in their retirement accounts would have just been nearly wiped away. Obama had to really deal with that, and that was basically going to be the thing that he was going to have to fix. The agenda for the Obama administration was not only just dealing with the economic crisis, but also doing something that the Democrats had wanted to do since like ever, which is pass a Universal Health Care Act. And that was going to be something that Obama was going to try to push through Congress, called Obamacare, which, depending on how you look at it, has worked and hasn't worked. Democrats probably on the back burner, thinking about the environment, how much energy we consume. That was also a big priority. And also, I think Obama was elected in part because of wanting to get us out of Iraq and Afghanistan. When he was first elected, I can remember, like, people were really like, wow, this guy's going to do a lot of great things. His first 100 days, it's going to be awesome. Everything's, it's the first black president. It's historic, right? And then you guys know what happens when presidents are in office for a year, right? The honeymoon's over. Real life begins. That's exactly what happened to him. In 2010, This is shocking, to be honest with you. Remember that huge majority I just showed you that the Democrats had? They had 255 folks in the House. By 2010, 2 years into Obama's presidency, the Democrats lose the entire majority in the House, and the Republicans basically take it over. What's the significance of that? The significance of that is that it has basically nearly paralyzed President Obama's ability to get much of anything done that he wants to do, because of course the Republicans are not willing to work with him. And I don't care how much each side says that they're willing to work with each other, they're just not. You know why? Because there's an election at stake, right? And so this is something that happens to presidents 2 years into their term, and it definitely happened to Obama. The thing that really did Obama in was trying to pass his health care law in 2009, and there was so much resistance to it by conservative Republicans, and conservatives bought up a lot of television airtime and the internet and stuff, and they were talking about how this is going to ruin America. America's on the road to socialism. Ay, like the Chicken Little, the sky is falling. Oh, geez. Yeah, in some ways they're right. So, unfortunately for Obama, that has not worked out the way that he had wanted it to. The biggest challenges that he has had to deal with, to be honest with you, are continued efforts by a faction in the Republican Party called the Tea Party. And basically what you can see what they're about: smaller government, less spending, lower taxes, right? T means taxed enough already, you know. These folks are a huge group of people that are pressuring the Republicans to be more conservative and to resist Obama more, okay? And unfortunately, it's been for Obama. If you're President Obama, you got to think these guys are they're out of control, you know, because they won't work with you, you know, and they're willing to fight against any kind of government spending. They've tried to eliminate Obamacare 50 times, over 50 times in the United States House, to vote it down, to defund it, get rid of it. They've tried that. Hasn't worked. One of the famous events in late 2011 was called the fiscal cliff. Like America was about to default on its debt, like past its debt limit. And depending on who you are, you might blame the Democrats for not giving in to what the Tea Party wants. If you're a Tea Party patriot, you might blame the Democrats for not doing the right things. But it's been repeated conflicts over spending and taxing that has defined President Obama's second term. And unfortunately for him, he's at a point now where he has 1 year left, and really he's not going to be able to do much of anything. And you know what he's done, really, right? Is he's decided to basically, instead of working with Congress, he's decided to do a lot of things that we call executive orders. Like he's going around Congress because he knows that the Republicans they just won't work with it. In 2012, Obama won with a smaller margin of victory over Mitt Romney. If you remember that election,